just to make sure that we can hear you. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So today we're talking about how to find happiness in project management. So this is a topic that I've been really looking forward to. And before I introduce the guest, so I don't know if many of you have seen this study that was released by LinkedIn, I believe, and it said that it was a burnout study, and project managers, the project slash program management profession, had the highest rate of burnout, right? And I mean, I think I have some ideas of why that may be the case.
This is the highest rate of any job compared to any other job.
Compared to, yes, any other, like it was number one, the highest rate.
Shocking, isn't it? That's shocking.
Yeah. So I mean, so I think this is such an apt discussion right now, because a lot of, and I mean, this is also backed up. Like, I speak to 3 to 4 PMs every day, and this is not surprising, right? Just the things that they're going through in their day to day. At the same time, I think this is one of the best professions like ever. Like, I see myself doing this forever, right? So today's discussion is about how to find happiness in project management. And I'm really excited to have this discussion with Chris. Chris is one of the most highly rated instructors in the worldwide. He's an expert in project management, and he's also done lots of courses on happiness. So I think Chris is especially and uniquely positioned to talk about this. So without further ado, Chris, how are you doing today?
Yes, well, it's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And yes, it is weird, isn't it, that I've made courses on project management and on happiness. And you may wonder what the connection is, but the connection actually is time management. Because I started with being obsessed with time management, and then I went sideways in one direction to project management, because time management and project management, I think, are quite similar. I could talk about that if you want, but sure. You can see that they would appeal to the same sort of person. But going the other way from time management, I went towards happiness, because why do anything with your time if it doesn't make you happy? And so time management is all about, doing the things you want to do and trying to get, your life versus work and all those things. So I think time management is the link between project management and happiness. But we'll explore that, I guess, in this conversation, won't we? But thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be asked.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. I didn't quite think of it that way, but yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to. Like, managing time, whether at the very granular level or at the more strategic level, if I can put it that way. So the day to day, or your multi-quarters or multi-year project. That's really interesting. So Chris, why should we care about this topic? Why should PMs care about becoming happier?
Yeah. It's funny because nobody cares about happiness, really. So for example, I'm making a happiness podcast called Happy-ish, because I'm not happy all the time, Happy-ish, and hardly anybody is watching it. And even though it's great, of course. And if you talk to people about happiness, like, would you like a happiness course at work? They go, no, my people are all right. I pay them. They don't need to know. And happiness is regarded as sort of like a luxury or something fluffy that maybe, people who sit in a wellness spa with their legs crossed or something going on. And I think a lot of people think there's something really, not very down to earth about happiness. And yet it's the most important thing. Like, why would you do anything if it doesn't make you happy? Why do you want to make money if it's not going to make you happy? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We could talk about that. Why would you change your job and do something else if it's not going to make you happy? Why would you get married if it's not going to make you happy, or have kids? So happiness surely is the most important thing. It's not worth doing anything if it doesn't make you happy. And yet people don't really think it's a proper subject, and people don't put time and effort into understanding it or studying it for some reason. I think it's maybe because if you're quite happy, you think, well, that's probably all I'm going to get. There's probably not much I can do about it, so I won't even think about it. And I think if you're not very happy, you tend to think, well, I can't do it. I'm never going to be happy. So what can you do? And, my work is horrible, but what can you do? That's just what I have to do to earn my money. So I think people think that it's not in their control. But of course it is, and your work must make you happy. If you're only happy 2 days a week at home at the weekend, that's not enough. You know, you're at work 5 days a week. And in fact, for many of us, your job is who you are. I mean, it's interesting because you didn't say you work as a project manager, Mukhtar. You said you are a project manager. And, you know, I think our job is often what we are. And if our job doesn't make us happy, that's terrible, you know? And the final thing I'd add, by the way, why we should care is because if you're happy, you'll perform better, you'll do a better job, and then that will make you happier. But you know, your performance is tied up with your happiness. I think it's very hard to be good at a job if you're not happy doing it. You know, so I think happiness is it's really, really important. And I find it amazing that people think happiness is sort of a luxury or something fluffy, because it's not. It's really important. We have to understand it, and we have to be good at it. It's really important.
Right.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, I just remembered because I read this book, The Happiness Advantage. It's one of my favorite books. And I think one of the core, if I remember correctly, one of the core arguments that he's making in the book is a lot of people delay happiness. So they think that, you know, they want to get success so that they can be happy. But a lot of times it's the reverse. You know, like, you know, you should be happy right now. And you know, that sort of permeates how you know, your work and everything, and that leads to success, right? So that's why he called it the happiness advantage, right? So instead of delaying happiness, like happiness is actually critical for you right now in order to be successful.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I think to try to get success and then happiness is not sensible at all. If you can find something that you're happy doing, you're more likely to be successful at it.
Right.
You know, in fact, the key really is to find something you enjoy and that you're good at. And if you can find both of those things, then you'll have happiness and success. But if you're doing something you don't enjoy just because you're quite good at it, or because you think it will give you success, then that's not going to work. In the end, that's not a sensible way to go.
For sure.
So, absolutely, we want happiness now, don't we? We can't. And of course, some people say, "Well, I'll be happy in 5 more years when I get promoted, or in 3 years when I finish my MBA, or when I get married, or when I have kids, or when the kids leave home, I'll finally be happy. When they get out of my house and I get some time to myself, or when I retire, I'll be happy." But you don't want, even if that's true, you don't have to wait all those years before you can be happy. And anyway, it probably isn't true, because if you're thinking those kind of things, when you get to that point, your life will probably still be roughly the same. You'll still be you, with all your attitudes and your habits and things. And it's probably not going to change when something happens in a couple of years' time. So you should be able to be happy now. And you're absolutely right. You don't want to be waiting for it to come in the future. No.
Yeah. And one of the things that just came up for me, Chris, is a lot of times when I look at old pictures, like it just brings a lot of joy, right, to me. Like, you know, if I just look at old pictures, but if I think about it, like right now, if I fast forward like 20 years into the future and I look at what, you know, like pictures from today, I will be listening and I'll be happy, right? But right now I'm not as happy because I am stressed about it. So it's like it's amazing. Like, you know,
you're at your prime now. You're at the top of your game now, probably. It's funny though. At least it's good that you get happiness from the past. Like my wife, she looks at pictures from the past and it makes her unhappy, because she thinks, look how young I looked then, and I look much older now. She says, you know, I don't agree, but she says that, and she goes, you know, I wish I could turn back the clock and go back to that time. So, you know, if you have unhappiness in the past and you look back, it might make you unhappy. And if you have happiness in the past, it might make you unhappy because you wish you could go back. But I agree with you. I think I can look back at good times in the past and relive them and get happiness from that. And unhappy times in the past, like, you know, when I was doing a job I hated, that still makes me happy because I'm not doing it now. And I look back and think, thank goodness I'm not doing that anymore. So I think it all depends on your attitude, whether you get happiness from the past, whether it's good or bad things. You can get happiness from the past, although I think the main thing is to get happiness from the present.
Exactly.
And I read somewhere that all negative emotions are in the past or the future. So, fear, for example, is in the future, and regret is in the past, and sorrow comes from the past. But worry and fear come from the future, and actually, happiness is in the present, and it's almost the only thing that is right now, right in the present. So you don't want to be getting too much happiness from the past, and you don't want to be getting happiness only from the future of thinking, won't it be great when I get there? You want to be getting it from, right now. We should be getting happiness just from this conversation now, and what fun it is to talk to each other, and how interesting to kick some ideas around. That's where the happiness is.
Right. Amazing. So just quickly, Nadav says, hello, Nadav. Yes, this is going to be recorded. And even after the live, you should see this on the field.
Yes, you can go to either of our feeds, and it should be there, I think.
Right. Yeah, it will be.
I'll definitely put a link to it in my feed if it doesn't appear in my feed.
Sure. And Khadija, hi, hello, Khadija. Khadija says, my goal is to step into 2026 happy with open arms for success. Amazing. Yeah, I like that. By the way, for those of you that are watching, just say hello and where you're calling in from. It's always interesting to see where people are calling in from.
Yeah, definitely.
We've had people call in from different, very interesting locations. So Chris, I want to pivot and talk about what are some of the myths and mistakes that we make when it comes to happiness, right?
Yeah. Can I have two?
For sure.
Because I think one myth about happiness, one mistake we make is we think our brain knows what's good for us. This is not really about project management, this particular one, but we think we know what's good for us. So, because surely your own brain will make the right choices to make you happy. But actually, our brains are not very well adapted to the modern world. We're still cavemen, really. And I think maybe men are more cavemen. Maybe women are only a little bit cave women, but men are very cavemen. So when we were cave people, we had, if we ever got food, we would have to eat as much food as we could while it was there. When you manage to kill that dinosaur, you eat as much as you possibly can. Actually, there weren't any dinosaurs, were there, when we were cavemen? But you know what I mean, mammoths or whatever they were. But now, of course, it's not good for us to eat as much food as we can all the time. And so, when we were cave people, it was good to be lazy, to conserve energy. Right. But now we've got unlimited food, we've got warm houses, etc. And so laziness is actually not good for us anymore. We need to work harder and not be selfish and not compete, but we need to work in a team. And there are lots of things that our brains tell us to do that are not good for us. So helping other people, for example, our brain might say, no, don't waste time helping them. You need to look after yourself. But now we live in a sort of an abundance world where we do have the time and the resources to help other people, and we should. And that will actually make us happier in the end. So our brains quite often point us towards short-term happiness, which does not give us long-term happiness. So I think, that's one mistake we make, a myth perhaps, is that we know what's good for us. And that's why we put things off and we're lazy and we just think, why am I so hopeless? It's because our brains are not designed for the modern world. But the other myth, I think, is that it's not in our control. And it's true that some of happiness is not in your control. So some of it is genetic. Some of us are just genetically happier than others. And some of it, is how we're born into maybe we're born with like a better brain or better temperament or something. But there's a whole lot of happiness that is in your control. And there are simple things you can do to be happier. So, for example, the biggest cause of unhappiness at work is your boss. And if you're watching this and you've got a good boss, then that's great and you're lucky. But on average, when they ask people, it tends to be people's bosses that make them unhappy. And of course, you have to have a boss who is there to make sure you work. And so it's always going to be a little bit tricky between you and your boss. But if you can have a good relationship with your boss, that makes a big difference. And I think to an extent, we can manage our boss. We can make sure we communicate a lot. We're honest with our boss and perhaps a little bit assertive with our boss sometimes as well and things. So I think you can affect the relationship with your boss. And if you can't, if you've got a terrible boss and they're making you unhappy, then you can leave, and leaving is within your control. You know, searching for a good company and a good culture and a good boss is something we should do. Also, I think saying no to things that don't make you happy, not necessarily with your boss anymore, but in your life generally, we can say no to things. Both in our personal lives and at work. And I think a lot of us are bad at saying no, and we end up doing things that don't make us happy. And we can control our negative emotions more than we realize as well. So we have these negative emotions, which are designed for when we were living in caves. So something like, let's say, anger is probably quite useful when you're, you know, like in the jungle or having to fight a crocodile or something. You have to get angry because it makes you stronger. I'm going to win this fight. Or maybe, you know, when you're being attacked or something. But nowadays, in the modern world, being angry doesn't help. If you're driving your car, getting angry doesn't help. It just makes you drive the car badly. Or being in a meeting or on a phone call or something, getting angry doesn't help. It makes you perform worse. And lots of negative emotions are actually quite unhelpful. Like fear, you know, we have to have some fear, a little bit of fear, otherwise we would do crazy things. But to be really frightened, like if you have to give a presentation to a big audience, fear will make you do the presentation worse. It's not helpful in our modern world. It helps you run away very quickly from a mammoth, but it doesn't help you do a presentation or make a sales call or something like that. So, but the myth, I think, is that we can't do anything about our negative emotions and we just have to be a slave to our negative emotions. But actually, you can overcome your negative emotions. And you can say, I'm not going to get angry. I feel the anger bubbling up. And then I'm just going to say, no, I'm not going to feed the flames. I'm not going to go, oh, I can't believe he said that. Ugh. I'm going to say, no, he's not going to make me angry, because if he makes me angry, he's won. So I'm going to let that go. You know, it's his problem, not mine. Or the fear, you can feel the fear coming and say, well, I'm going to get rid of the fear because I'm going to plan. And I'm going to have a really good plan for the presentation and it's going to be fine. I know I can do presentations. I've done them before. It'll be fine. So what you say to yourself, you can kind of push back on those negative emotions. And you can say to yourself that, you know, I think that fear is going to make me perform better, but actually it won't. So I'm not going to allow that emotion in. Or I think that anger is going to make me stronger, but actually it won't. So I'm not going to allow that emotion in. I'm going to push it back out again. And I think, you know, we can all do that. And with practice, you can get better and better at pushing out negative emotions. Right. So I think it's a myth to say it's not in our control, because I think we really can control how we think and how we behave with other people. We can learn that stuff. Right. I think anyway.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. And one thing that came up for me, Chris, I just read this very amazing book. Yeah, the name will probably come to me, but it's about like this psychologist who I think is at the cutting edge of emotions. He's been studying emotions for a long time. And one thing that I remember him saying is that for emotions, we cannot control them and we can control them, right? And this is what I recall. So the initial, because an emotion is it's a response to stimuli, right? Something happens, you get angry. Something happens, so like that initial response, like it's gonna happen because you're a human being. You're reacting to things, right? But now what you do have control over is what happens afterwards, right? So every human being will experience there are sort of two variables when it comes to emotions. There's the intensity and the duration, right? So you get angry, you can really, like you mentioned, feed the flames and increase intensity and duration. but you can also, control that where it's like it doesn't consume you and the duration
Yeah,
doesn't.
I agree. You can't stop it bubbling up to start with, but you can say, I'm only going to give it 5 seconds. I'm going to be really annoyed with this driver who's just pulled in front of me. I'm going to go, "Argh!" But then I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to, and you can say, I'm not going to feed the flames any more than that. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to give it 5 seconds and then it's gone. And I absolutely think you can do that, because you can definitely do the reverse and feed the flames, can't you?
For sure.
You definitely can say to yourself, I can't believe he did that. Oh, people like that really annoy me. I bet he's a horrible person. Blah, blah, blah. And you can easily do that. So it's all about what you say to yourself inside your head, isn't it?
Right. And I think for me, one of the key things that I realized, because when I would feel like these emotions, I would feel bad for feeling some of these emotions. Like, maybe, I did something I shouldn't have. I feel guilty. And then I feel bad for feeling guilty, and it just like increases the intensity and the spiral, right?
Yeah,
but I think what I really liked is that, okay, when you get that initial reaction, you're a human being, that is fine. It's what do you now do with it, right? That's why. So, you don't have control over things that just come up, but you do have control about the trajectory of that emotion. So to me, like that was, a very key insight for me.
I read a really good quote. Somebody said that hate is like drinking poison and thinking the other person will die. And I think that's so true, isn't it? Because, hate is related to anger, I suppose, isn't it?
Right.
But if you sit there hating somebody, and it might well be your customer or your boss, but if you just sit there hating them, all you're doing is you're the one drinking the poison. You're the one who's being made unhappy by this process. They probably don't even know, and even if they discovered it, they probably just think that you were wrong or stupid. So hate is just the most stupid emotion, really. And once you realize you're the one drinking the poison, then you can think, well, I'm just not going to drink that poison anymore. It's just not going to get me anywhere. Talk to the person about their behavior if you want, or what you want them to do, but don't just sit there having an emotion, because that's just drinking poison. And I love that quote. I think that's really a good way to think about it.
No, amazing. It's a different perspective of looking at it.
There's a lot of hate in the world at the moment, isn't there? And there's lots of politicians stirring it up in all our different countries that we're in. Although you're in Canada, aren't you? You've got a great prime minister. I love him. In England, we love him. We think he's great. But we've got various people trying to be elected who are all stirring up hate, and it's just it doesn't get anybody anywhere. It's not sensible. It's just drinking poison.
Right.
Anyway, back to project management.
All right. So just a quick commercial break. So if you're watching this on Substack, because we're beaming this Substack, YouTube, it's on LinkedIn Live, and also Apple and Spotify. So wherever you're watching this, please just make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're liking this, or subscribe. That would really mean a lot to us. And then another thing is that if you're looking for help landing your next PM role, you can click on the link that you're going to be seeing around this video, and let's see if we can help you. If we can't help you, we'll give you free resources. All right. Now I'm going to go to the chat and just read some of the comments there. So hey, Prashant calling in from Mississauga, Canada. Hey, Alicia from Michigan, US. Hey, Khadija from Virginia. My daughter was born in Virginia. Hey, Ashish. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. From Toronto. Srikana says, all right, is that a question? Hey, Chris, it's nice to hear from you. I attended some of your courses on project management in the past. When things go wrong in projects, as they inevitably do, what can we do to stop feeling bad about the situation and instead learn to find happiness? Please share your insights. Yeah. Okay.
That's a question, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe we can take this. I was going to say, we'll probably talk about this later on. But yeah, Chris, you wanna take this on now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, things always go wrong in projects because projects are difficult. You're trying to do something new that hasn't been done before. That's the definition of a project, isn't it? It has a start and a finish, but it hasn't been done before. If it has been done before, it's just a process. And there's not really any excuse for processes to go wrong, although they still do. But projects, you're trying to achieve something you've never done before. So things will go wrong, and that's fine. So I think, firstly, don't beat yourself up about it. often they go wrong through no fault of yours, like customers change their mind or things change in the world or whatever, and that's all part of it. So that's the first thing. And in fact, you've put as they inevitably do. So I think, firstly, it doesn't mean it's your fault. And then it's your job to fix it, isn't it? And to recover and find answers. So you should find happiness from fixing things when they go wrong. And, if it goes really wrong and you can fix half of it, it depends what you focus on, I think, because you should still focus on the half that you've managed to fix. You still achieved something. It's like, if you aim for the stars and you manage to get to the moon, that's still an achievement, isn't it? And you still made the world better from your project. And you could be thinking, yeah, but I didn't get to the stars. But don't think that. Just think, I've reached the moon, and that's great. So I think it's really about what you focus on. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault if your project doesn't go perfectly. It will be because of external factors.
Yeah. And for me, I think this is also something that I struggle with, because when I struggled with, and I think I'm still struggling with it right now to some extent. And here is why. So I think it's difficult for me to separate me from the project, right? Because when I am on the project, like, I am all in. I'm thinking about it, constantly, and for lack of a better word, I obsess about getting the project to the finish line, right? That's why, like, when I'm done with the project, like, I need a break before I start the next project, because I need that time to just, just like detox and unwind. So I think when things happen like that, it's difficult for me to not take it personally, right? And I understand that intellectually, like, things happen and all of that, but when things go wrong, it's difficult for me to separate myself from the project. But one thing that has helped me recently, because I think some of this is just maybe how I've been programmed, because like when I was working with somebody and was like, okay, why are you feeling that way? Like, when something happens in your project, why are you feeling that way? And I think one of the core underlying beliefs for me was that I should have known better, or I should have done something, right? So like that comes up. It's like almost it's like that is an underlying ethos that I've just sort of really believed, right? So whenever that happens, like, it comes up, right? And that is heavy. And for me, like, when I realized that, it was like, okay, wow, it was heavy to accept, but it was also empowering, because now when that comes up, I remind myself, okay, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I should have known better. I should have done something. And then I now replace it with the opposite of that. I did the best I could at the time.
Yeah, and I've learned from it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So,
when that comes up, you can do.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think some of us project managers often have a thing called be perfect, where they want to make everything completely perfect. I've got this. So little things annoy me, So for example, if I write a book and then I discover there's a typo in the book, just one spelling mistake in the whole book, it really annoys me. And that's good because I care about detail, but it's bad for my happiness.
Right.
Or if I discover that my watch is just 1 minute, not quite 1 minute out from the right time, then I get in and I fix it. And it doesn't really matter, and then I'm thinking about the seconds, I want everything to be exactly right. And I think in a project, it will never be completely perfect. There'll always be something you could have done better.
Right.
And once you realize that you're just the victim of this habit of always looking for the faults and trying to fix the faults, then you can start thinking, well, no, 99% great, this project. And I think projects of all things will never be perfect.
Right.
You might be able to make a process perfect eventually, but you can't perfect a project. So I think this drive to do things perfectly is quite unhealthy and should be resisted. And you should just say to yourself, no, I'm not trying to do it perfectly, because if I spend twice as long doing the project 1% better, that's a whole load of time I could have spent on something else. I could have got a lot more results doing a whole load of other things. So doing things, 95% well enough is great. And to get that last 5%, you'd have to do fewer projects. You maybe have to do half the number of projects to get them from 95 to 99, because they'll never be 100 anyway. And that's madness to try to get the last bit. So you get diminishing returns from your time, don't you? So I think don't let the be perfect driver make you unhappy, because that's unhealthy mentally.
Right. No, I really love that you said that, because I think for me too, I suffer from that, because like I really want to have a perfect day, and it's not achievable. Like, so it's like you're setting yourself up for unhappiness and failure from the beginning, so I think when I started to recognize that, and somebody was helping me with this, and what she mentioned is, you should try to have like a budget. And to me, I really enjoyed this. So the analogy that she gave is like, okay, as a responsible adult, you have budget allocated for unplanned expenses,
Yes.
or unplanned expenses and even planned expenses, like, maybe for your car, for your house, a mortgage, so that when these things come, you don't get upset. Oh my goodness, why did they take the money from my account for my mortgage? Like, that this is gonna happen, so you plan for it. The same thing with projects. A customer will piss you off, your team member will not update Jira, so like, and it happens regularly. So you can budget.
You have a happiness budget almost.
Exactly. Like, okay, I know that this month 3 people are gonna piss me off because they didn't update Jira.
Yeah, but you could do it the other way around. You could have a positive budget, and you could say, I just want 3 good things to happen today in the middle of all the rest, all the badness. And you could say, that's 3 good things already that I've had today. And so I'm already ahead of the game, aren't I?
Nice. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So yeah, you can do
my budget of my income budget of happiness.
Exactly. Already. Yeah. And to me, when I did that, like, that was really, because like what was really happening there is expectation setting. And as project managers, we're very good at this when it comes to managing expectations with stakeholders. But we need to manage expectations with ourselves. Yeah. You will never have a perfect project. If you're expecting a perfect project, you're gonna be unhappy.
Yes, you're the worst stakeholder in your project because you want everything to be perfect. I like it. That's really clever. I like that idea. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so that helped me. So, Srikant, I really love that question. Yeah, this was a nice tangent. I don't know if it was tangent. I think we're gonna get there anyways.
What other mistakes do you think project managers make then, apart from wanting everything to be perfect? It's funny, you said managing your stakeholders. I think some project managers, they don't manage the stakeholders well enough at the start. And so they think, right, my boss has asked me to do this and I'm going to do it. And off they go. And they don't say to all the other stakeholders, what do you think? And then, of course, later on, there's lots of trouble and all the stakeholders, well, I didn't want it to look like that. And I didn't want this. And I think not having a really good kickoff meeting at the start and saying to everybody, are we sure this is what we all want? I think that can lead to unhappiness later, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And it just reminded me of a story. So one time early on in my career, I was told to go, like, lead this project. And this project was an interesting project. It was very high stakes, and I was assigned to it, and there was no budget, right? So it was almost like, this was gonna be it's like a high risk project that people didn't really have faith in.
Yeah.
Right? So I was assigned to it, and then I was told, okay, this is the main stakeholder. So I was like a consultant, and then it was a client. So I went to meet this client, and he was like, okay, yeah, this is how I see the project going, et cetera, et cetera. So I went to that, and I started moving along with the project. And then there was another person who just I didn't know anything about the person, and this person just blasted me, saying, what's going on here? Like, how come I wasn't consulted, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I ended up finding out that she was actually the most powerful person in the project, but the org chart did not show that. Like, she was just like on the side in the org chart.
It doesn't tell you everything, does it?
Right. So like what you just mentioned, at the beginning, just spending that extra time to meet with everybody and to really understand the dynamics and to look beyond the org chart. Like,
Yes.
that would have saved me a lot of headache. I eventually ended up winning her over, and she became like an ally, and she's a very good ally to have because of her power and her influence. And then she actually helped the project succeed, right? But at the very, like, that could have gone, really badly for me, because I went to somebody who I thought was, was the main influencer, and I was just going along, and I ended up like stepping on another person's toes.
Well,
so
when you said there was no budget, it made me think of one other thing that project managers should do, although I've never done this, which is to just say no at the start. Say, no, I'm not going to do that project. Because sometimes they ask you to do a project with hardly any money, hardly any time.
Right.
It's got to be amazing. And you just think, this is never going to, this is a nightmare. I can tell this project has got all these red flags. And I think, a way you could increase your happiness is to say, do you know what? I'm not going to do this project. You can get somebody else to do this one. But I've never done that. But there have been times when I wish I had.
Right.
So, maybe that's another option. Certainly, you could have a meeting at the beginning with everybody, and you could be thinking, I have got the power to walk away from this if I want.
Right.
You don't always have the walk away power, but sometimes you do. And it's worth thinking, do I even want to do this project?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that, depending on the stage at which, and you're standing in the company, you can do that.
Yeah.
Then I was like, I needed to be useful, because another project that I was on, I got kicked off the project because I was very junior. The other person was senior, and the client wanted to cut costs, right? So to me, like, this was my only option to be useful. So he ended up working out in the end. But one thing that you mentioned that I've been also thinking about is just maybe even having some sort of a scorecard, like, just before you take on the project, you just look at the various factors. Okay, what's the level of support from, in terms of resources?
Yeah.
Is leadership backing this? Do I have, what's the feasibility of the timeline? Like, just do some quick,
how many red flags can I see on this?
Exactly. And then if it gets to a certain threshold, then either you decline or you just set expectation with yourself that, okay, this is gonna be a difficult project, right? So
and you might say, unless I can get one person to really help me, or unless I can get this, then I'm going to walk away. You could decide what you're going to be, couldn't you, before that big meeting?
Right. Because a lot of times, I think what has happened in my career is that I just get in there, and then you wonder why you are sinking, right? But you can really set expectations with yourself. Again, coming back to expectations, like just knowing that, all right, because leadership, there's a lot of politics going on, and lots of powerful people are against this project. I know, like, that's a major red flag, and we need to sort that out before we start the project.
There's another part of all this, isn't there, which is feeling alone. And I think, some people are quite aloners anyway. They don't mind being on their own, but mostly we like to have a few people with us, a bit of a feeling of being in a team. And I think with project management, it can be quite a lonely job if you're not careful. Sure. You've got your stakeholders all over there asking for stuff, and then you've got your delivery team here who don't really even belong to you, maybe, and you're just kind of in the middle of all this, but you're not really part of anything. You're sort of on your own when you run a project. Right. But I think, it is possible to make your delivery team feel like you're part of a team. If you involve them in the planning and the decisions, rather than trying to do everything yourself, you can start to get to feel like you and them are a team. And if you communicate a lot with the stakeholders, you can hopefully not feel completely alone. And I think not feeling alone is part of happiness in project management, if you can do it. Do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. There was a post that I did where I said the PM position is one of the loneliest positions. And I know it's felt that way for me for most of it, because you like you mentioned, you have a lot of, so in your project team, you are the only project manager or program manager. So you're working with engineers, marketers, so they all have each other, but you are just by yourself. And a lot of times you are, you don't have anybody reporting to you. you have a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
and you sort of have to navigate, that and deal with that. Like, you have to influence without authority. And then a lot of people come like venting to you and complaining to you,
Yes.
right? Because you are this
Bringing
new
problems that
authority.
you have to fix. Yeah.
Right. So you're absorbing everybody's stress, and then you don't really have anybody to take your stress, because if you vent, like, it can, people can read that wrongly. Okay, like, it can reduce the confidence they have in you, and all of that. So it can be a very lonely position. I know it's felt that way for me for a lot of my career.
I agree. And I think all you can do really is if you communicate a lot with your team, if you have a weekly team meeting, you share the decisions with the team, you basically, you can get the team to do a lot of the work, but not just doing the work, but you can feel as if you are a team. How are we going to do this? How can we deliver this on time? What are we going to do about the fact they've changed this bit of it? And in your own mind, if you can feel like you've got a team, so you want to make them feel like a team anyway, so they do better work. But I think it helps you as well if you involve people more. And I think a lot of project managers try to do everything themselves. And I think you don't have to. I wouldn't call it delegating. I think I'd call it sharing the work, really. Sharing the decisions and sharing the work with the team maybe will make you feel a little bit happier. But I think you're always going to be a little bit on your own. I think it's one of those jobs. That's how it is.
It's kind of like the CEO position, because at the end of the day, many CEOs say, it's a lonely role.
It's like being CEO of your own little company when you run a project, isn't it? Because you're in charge of the money, the time, the people, the customers. You kind of, it is like being CEO of a temporary little business, isn't it? I agree. But I think that's good as well as bad, by the way.
Well, yeah. No. So again, like, I think that the project manager position has a lot of challenges, but I think it's one of the best jobs in the world.
Well, you get achievement for a start, don't you? Because you can think, I did that. Because like, I used to run a factory for a living, and it never ended. Always they wanted more, another job. And whenever we delivered a job, there'd always be 3 more that had started. You never cleared everything. Even at Christmas, everything was left half finished, But with a project, you finish that project and it's done, and you did it, and it's great, and also you have that variety of, we were talking earlier, weren't we? Like, every project is different. And the variety is great. You never get bored. I got bored with running the factory. Every day, the same problems, the same suppliers delivering late. But with projects, at least you have different suppliers delivering late. So you have variety. And creativity in project management as well. So you're constantly having to solve problems and think of new ways to do things, because things are new in a project by definition. And you get that closure at the end when you think the project is finished. And maybe it was a terrible project full of horrible people, but at least it's finished, And I think I really like closure. I like to finish things. And then, of course, the next week you start another one. You have a little break maybe, and you start another one. But I think achievement, variety, creativity, and closure all add to the happiness of being a project manager. And so if you can keep the stress down and not be too fussy about the detail, I think, it can be the best job there is. And, I really would recommend it. Plus, it's transferable skills. So, you'll always be able to find a job if you know about project management. Always going to be in demand.
Chris, was there a time in your career where you weren't happy, and what changed for you?
Oh, don't start me on that. I'll give you a quick answer. Because, I've been unhappy most of my career, actually, because I went into the wrong career. It's very difficult to know what career to do. So I started off as an engineer. I did a degree in engineering because I could do maths and my brain is sort of logical. But when I started as an engineer, I knew on day one I was not really cut out to be an engineer. There's so much detail, and I'm just not a detail person, and they spend weeks analyzing tiny things. Don't get me wrong, I really like engineers and I've got a lot of time for them, and they are improving the world and they're great people, but I was just a really bad engineer. So I was in the wrong job, and I went from there into being a manager. And that was more exciting and more fast moving and more focused on people and less maths. But it was also not the right job for me, because as a manager, I had to do lots of things that I didn't really like doing. I had to be horrible to people. I had to, fire people and, give people bad news and force people to move into jobs they didn't want to move into. And there were lots, I just felt I didn't like the person I was becoming when I was a manager. And in fact, even from just seeing me for half an hour already now, could you imagine me running a factory with 200 people making plastic containers? It's just, I'm not the right person for that. And so engineer and manager were both the wrong jobs for me. Only eventually I discovered training, running training courses and teaching people. I discovered that was what I was born to do. And so I would say to anybody who's not I wouldn't say I was that unhappy. It was all right being a manager, but there were times quite often when I thought, is this really the best job for me? Am I just settling for a job that I can do that's quite well paid, but it doesn't really make me happy? And I would say to anybody, keep looking for your perfect job, because your perfect job is there somewhere if you can find it. And it took me too long, really. I should have changed it sooner, but I'm just really glad to have found my thing eventually, and I only found my thing because I got fired. I would never have left my management jobs if they hadn't fired me. If they had just made life unpleasant, I would still have stayed there, and they did make life unpleasant and I did stay. But eventually they said, look, this isn't working out. I got made redundant twice. And it led eventually to me taking a job as a university lecturer and discovering training and teaching. But if they hadn't fired me, I think I'd still have stayed there, because that's what we do, isn't it? We just settle for a job that's okay, especially if it's quite well paid. You think, well, I can't do anything else. What else could I do? But you always can find another job that you can do. And I think the search must go on to find a job that you can actually love. I would honestly say I love doing what I do now. So I do Zoom training for people. I love that. And I make video courses for the internet, and I love doing that. And I occasionally give a talk at a conference, and I love doing that. I honestly love it. Occasionally I write a book about something, and I love that as well, actually. So there's maybe 4 things I do. I love them all. But it's taken me years to find that. I mean, it took me 30 years. So that was a bit stupid of me. I should have found it sooner. But the search must go on. That's what I would say. The search must go on.
Chris, if you were to do this over again, and you didn't want to take 30 years to find what you were good at, what would you do differently?
Well, I think I would ask lots of people about their jobs. Funnily enough, I never had a job called project manager, even though I was doing projects. And the projects were the parts of my work that I enjoyed. I think I would have enjoyed being a project manager, actually. And then when I finally went on a project management course, I just thought, whoa, I love it. This is great. I've been trying to guess how to do this all these years. So I think the first thing I would ask lots of different people, what's it like? Like, I very nearly worked as a veterinary surgeon, but luckily I asked somebody what it's like being a vet. And he said, it's terrible. You spend your whole time with your arm up a horse's bottom, or giving injections to people's hamster, or having to put dogs to sleep. He said, it's a really depressing job. And the customers always complain you can't fix their animal. And I thought, right, I'm not going to do that. And I'm so glad I had that conversation. But I didn't learn from that and have that same conversation with lots of other people. And I should have, so I should have gone to project managers. What's it like? And I perhaps would have discovered project management. And I should have gone to some, trainers and said, what's it like doing training courses? And so I think I should have looked around more, and possibly I should have experimented more and actually tried more jobs, because I thought I couldn't do anything else, but I think I probably could have. Well, I know now that I could have. I think I should have tried just giving a talk at a conference, for example, because when I was a manager in the world of plastic extrusion, I could have given a talk at Plastic Extrusion World, or whatever the conference was called, and I probably would have really enjoyed giving the talk, and then I would have thought, maybe I could do this for a living. So I think I should have experimented, and I should have definitely just investigated and asked more questions and widened out my view of what my options were. I mean, nowadays you can feed your CV into ChatGPT and just say, here's my resume. What should I do for a job? And I did that, by the way. I tried it. So I took all of my resume up to when I became a trainer, but I didn't show it that part. And I just put, manager and engineer, and I put it into ChatGPT and said, what should this person do as a job? And it listed several things, including management training. So, it would have given me the answer that I took years to discover. It was there. So I think that's what I should have done. And I think, by all means, use AI as well, but just asking questions and looking at what else you can do. Don't settle for a job that's good enough. That's my big message, I think.
Yeah, no, I really love that. So just to summarize what I heard you say, talk to lots of people, experiment more, try out different things, and even use AI. Right, AI will be able to suggest.
Exactly.
One thing that I would add in my experience, because I've also one of the things I really like about the project management space is that it cuts across on pretty much every industry and sector out there. And I started out in oil and gas, and I got tired and burnt out with the oil and gas space. But I wanted to explore other industries. So I used my project management experience to pivot into healthcare, because I really wanted to go into healthcare.
Because it's the same process, isn't it, with any project, anywhere. Sometimes the employer may not believe that, but it's absolutely true. You could run a project in anywhere. You could put a man on or a woman on Mars next if you wanted, Mukhtar, couldn't you? Because it's just the same process.
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I went into healthcare, like, I really loved it. I really, and then after that I went to real estate. So I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about project management, is that I can sort of explore different sectors. And I'm the kind of person that I really love that that diversity, that variety.
Sectors have really different cultures, don't they? Because gas and oil is very kind of macho and competitive and serious. The healthcare, well, they're still serious, but they're much more caring, much more gentle, much nicer, I think, as a working environment. Because I've done training for different sectors, and they vary hugely in the culture. The insurance sector, very they're so formal. You have to wear a tie and all this, and then IT, they're all like casual in t-shirts, and they're much more up for having a laugh. And so if you can find the culture that suits your way of thinking, then that makes a big difference. So the basic job may be the same, but the culture in different sectors can vary a lot, I think.
For sure. So one practical tip, because I know that there are many PMs listening or that will listen, and that might be feeling like they're not, happy right now, is just start talking with fellow PMs in other spaces, right?
Mm.
You know, like you will be surprised at how, number one, how many things that you have in common with the other person, and then just exploring their world.